Have you wondered about living elsewhere in your retirement? Well, we have almost daily. No, it's not a simple decision, especially when two people are involved.
Hi, this is
Gil
and Gene of Retire There, a podcast about retirement destinations. We live in Brooklyn, New York. Having grown up and worked in this area of the country, we're hoping to relocate when we're both retired. For us, it's the weather, the chaos, the noise, and the yearning to be near nature and not within 3 feet of human beings.
That's right. In February 2020, we embarked on our journey to find that special place. We spent a week in Winter Park, Florida, which is beautiful, but something said it wasn't for us. As we were planning for the next trip, the pandemic arrived. Gene then gave birth.
I gave birth?
To this podcast. With so many baby boomers retiring, many must be relocating. Why not connect with and learn from them?
Here's a little background about us.
I'm Asian, born in Brazil, and grew up in Flatbush, Brooklyn. I'm an engineer turned attorney turned podcaster. I recently retired from a university career practicing higher education law. I loved the academic environment, but it was time to do something else. I no longer have to set an alarm, drive in BQE traffic, or work with people who don't always share the same principles. Ooh, did I just say that? You bet I did. I traded all that in to binge crime dramas into the wee hours, just a little bit, to develop the podcast, to volunteer, practice metalsmithing, tackle our possessions. No regrets so far. Gene?
I'm not Asian, and as Gil mentioned, I'm not retired. I'm just plain tired.
Oh.
Born and raised in Long Island, New York, a place I always wanted to leave. I'm a law librarian working in a court who loves his job, but we're retired by the time we select our ideal location. We will be speaking to folks from across the street to across the globe who have moved to their dream venues and more. So please stay tuned and remember, if you know anyone who has moved anywhere for retirement, let us know.
Thank you. Today on Retire There, we visit with Peggy and Richard Cleveland in a quaint seaside town in the Pacific Northwest. If you guys could see my husband, he is salivating right now.
I always wanted to go out there.
He always wanted to go out there. They're in Steilacoom, Washington. Steilacoom sits on the Puget Sound and has a population of around 6,300 people. It has become a bedroom community for service members stationed at the Joint Army Air Force Base called Joint Base Lewis McChord. The origin of the name Steilacoom is disputed. However, many historians believe the town's name was derived from a Native American word meaning pink little flower. It's a town of firsts. Incorporated in 1854, it became the first incorporated town in what is now the state of Washington. Additionally, Steilacoom had the first jail, first public library, and first sawmill in Washington state. Interesting, right? The first jail. Maybe they had the first crooks ever.
There you go.
Okay, here's a little background about our guest.
Peggy Cleveland was born and raised in San Diego, California, until she was 11. Things got interesting after that. She has moved, get this, 33 times in her life.
Wow, expert.
And as a child, attended 3 different schools in 1 year. All that moving stems from being part of a military family. Also, Peggy served in the military herself, and she married a military man. She started college at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia, but due to health issues, moved home to Annapolis, Maryland, her home at the time, and completed her associate's degree. She then joined the Army and finished her degree at State University of New York, Regents College. Peggy served in the Army Reserves as a photojournalist, then became active duty in military intelligence. Wow. 6 years enlisted and 6 years as an officer. She then became a stay-at-home mom while continuing the nomad military life. She loves to write anything involving travel and currently works as a travel writer. Her work can be found in Northwest Travel and Life magazine, 253 Lifestyle magazine, as well as other regional publications. The name of her travel blog is Peggy, Where Should I Go? Great name, by the way.
Thank you.
As far as hobbies, she likes hiking and visiting unique sites. She is also a food and wine lover, which is a big part of travel, she says. Last but not least, She is obsessed with her Peloton bike, as I am with mine. Go Peloton.
Oh my God. Are you giving them a plug? Oh.
Am I the first? Come on.
All
People
right.
love Peloton.
I know. My sisters all have. I have not been on.
Yeah, we've had it for almost 4 years, and Gil has never ridden it.
Yeah, I am overweight and not proud, but okay. Let's not go there. Okay. And now a little bit about Peggy's husband, Richard, who unfortunately is unable to join us today. Richard Cleveland was born in California. He served in the Army for 28 years before retiring from the military. He currently works for the Army as a civilian. The couple met in South Korea, where they were both stationed. They have 2 sons. Michael is serving as a dog handler for the Army, and Charlie is attending college to become a commercial pilot, and he serves in the Air Force Reserves. So, Peggy, hello and welcome to Retire There. Thank you so much for participating in our show. Of all the places you've lived, over 30 at least, what made you decide to settle in Steilacoom?
It's such a beautiful town. You talked about the history, and I was a history major, so I just love the history of the town, and it's so unique because you've got this small town feel, but you're very close to larger cities like Seattle and even Lakewood and Tacoma, which are very close by. So you have all the benefits of the big city lifestyle, but you come home and you're in this quaint little town. And one of the big things that we were looking for when we retired was a view. And I always said I wanted to either have a view of the mountains or the water. And we actually, from our home, have the view of both. We look out over the Puget Sound, and then in the distance, we can see the Olympic Mountains, which is part of Olympic National Park. And it's just gorgeous.
Wow.
I remember I was visiting my niece who is attending Lewis and Clark College.
In Portland.
Yeah, in Portland. And I could also see Mount Olympia. Don't know if that's the same mount. But I mean, just being out there to see that was gorgeous. It was like,
well, yeah, you have the Cascade mountain range, and there's a series of volcanoes from Mount Baker, Mount Rainier, and then from Portland you can see Mount Hood and Mount Adams, and sometimes Mount St. Helens, and on a clear day you can even see Mount Rainier off of Interstate 5.
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe it was Mount Hood.
Wow.
I get all my mounts confused. Okay.
It's easy to.
Yeah. But so you had so many locations having traveled, through your career. Was Steilacoom a place that you were familiar with before?
No. And in fact, the whole idea, every couple of years as we started getting closer, my husband would tease me and say, I need to know where you want to retire right now. And it would just stress me out so much because I had moved my entire life. And so that's all I knew. And so this idea of you have to pick one place to live. And, when you think of retirement, compared to the military lifestyle, 2 or 3 years, you're not going to move, you're going to be really settled. So that was really stressful. But what had happened was we had always wanted to get stationed in the Pacific Northwest. And my husband's kind of his second to last duty assignment was at Joint Base Lewis McChord. And once we got here, we just fell in love with it. And so after a period of time, we're like, I think this could be our forever home. And that's what military families call when they decide to pick a place to live after retirement. It's their forever home.
Oh, nice. So now you have said that you've learned about houses each time you moved. Can you share with our audience what exactly did you learn about the houses? Like, how were they different and special?
Okay, so when we first got married and started moving, we always bought a house. So like our first assignment as a married couple, we bought a house in Atlanta, and we always liked to buy a new home, but buy it in a neighborhood that was maybe like in its second phase. So you could tell it was getting established. And then usually by the time we moved, the neighborhood was getting, more full. And then we would have a prime lot in that neighborhood. So we were always able to sell and do well. So I think kind of some of the big things I learned with houses was, the difference between like a new house and the older homes. Like the new houses are just not built as well as the older homes. So our retirement home was actually built in 1949. But you also have a little bit of a trade-off because you have to do things to upgrade it and, maintain it. So there's a payoff. there. But, when looking at a house that we wanted to live in for a long period of time, we wanted something that kind of stood the test of time.
Sure.
So, and then also, different things we learned too was like, I learned I don't want a jetted tub. They're a nightmare to clean and we hardly ever used it.
Yes.
Yeah. And so
all the dirt gets gunked into those little, I see them.
yeah. And then also when we did some renovations on this home, one of the people that we had talked to started talking to us about, well, as you get older, you should start thinking about things like in your shower, putting a shower bar in and making sure it's attached in a way so that if you grab it, it's not going to come off the wall, like a towel rack might. So, kind of different things like that. So kind of like there's like two stages, I think, of retirement. And as our family members have gotten older, one of the things I see that people really want as they get older is they want to stay in their house. Yeah. But like my parents retired on a huge piece of property on a lake. It was huge maintenance, as far as the yard and things like that. So they got to a certain age and they just couldn't stay there anymore. So I think that's a thing to consider too, is when you think about what type of house you want. I think maybe consider, one level, start thinking about things, not just when you're 55 or 60, but okay, I'm 80. Is this, do I want to stay in this house? Or maybe I want to make a plan that I'm going to decide when I turn 80, I'm going to sell the house and we're going to move into a condo or maybe a more retirement community or assisted living, things like that. So I think that's kind of something when you're kind of making your plan that you consider, the different ages you're going to be as you retire.
Yeah. As more and more people want to age in place, right? Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't want to go down to the basement. That's where we have our laundry right now. And it's cozy down there, but going down those steps and carrying, things up, it's a nightmare. Yeah. Yeah.
And then also, one of the things we were very privileged because my husband retired as a colonel from the Army. So that gives you access to the larger houses on the base. So we lived in these huge, like historic mansions, for the past 5 years. Cool. And so I really enjoyed it while I lived there and we had to do a lot of entertaining. But when I retired, I'm like, I want a house that I can keep clean myself and that's not as much work to do. So that was an issue too. So we actually bought a much smaller house than 20 years ago when I was thinking of retirement. I was thinking a lot different house. So I think having that opportunity to live in so many different types of houses really made our choice when we found this house a lot easier.
Yeah.
Speaking of houses, we all know the Pacific Northwest has gotten very expensive lately. Matter of fact, a lot of people are moving out and not moving in because of that reason. What would you say the cost of the houses are these days? Would you know that?
Well, my neighborhood right now, for the zip code, the average price of a house now is over $500,000, which is insane. Like we bought our house and it's now, according to different real estate sites, is now worth over $200,000 more than we paid for it. So we lucked out. We bought it when we did. And then the interest rates dropped. So we actually refinanced it twice, but we could not afford this house now, I don't think.
Same with us.
Yeah.
But when did you buy it? What year?
I think 2019. We've been at 3 years. So
wow, went up that much. That's amazing.
And it really, and even then it was higher compared to it was, we were like, man, I wish we had known we should have bought 2 years ago. But the thing, the real estate market out here is just crazy. So we actually looked at a house and you would look at it at an open house and you had to decide right then if you wanted the house and put your offer in. And on Wednesday, they decided which ones they were going to take. Oh my! So, but my experience buying houses is, back in 2008, or we bought a house in 2003. It increased dramatically in value. And then the housing crash happened and the prices dropped. So I don't think they're going to drop that much, but I think historically, I just don't know if it can sustain this. I feel like a lot of these houses, people, they're just paying so much more than they were worth. So I don't know. It's just a crazy time to be buying a home. But some areas of the country are a lot less expensive to live in, especially the South. So
Yeah, we've seen that. And what about the taxes in your area?
So the taxes are very high. The property taxes are, so far, I feel like they're okay. We haven't had any issues with it, but I've also seen where it's, jumped up 17% in 1 year. So there's no state income tax in Washington. So all the other taxes are where they get their money. So the sales tax is almost 10%. The property taxes are going to go up over time. So hopefully that's not going to price us out of our home. But some of the things, like, we're lucky because we retired from the military. We have access to shopping on the base, which is tax-free. And we have a lot of other benefits that kind of balance out that. And then also there's no state income tax. So that can be a plus too.
Well,
so
nice.
yeah, so it just kind of depends. You don't have that tax, but then also depending on what county you're in, the car tabs is what they call it when you re-register your vehicle. So when we had our vehicles registered in Florida, we would pay $90 for 2 years to register a car. And so I had a used car in the first year. It was like over $200 to register it. And if you have a new car, people are paying like up to $1,500 a year, for their.
There's no idea.
I know. Wow. So that's something, that I had no idea either, so that's something when you're thinking about retirement, is to check all those little things you have to pay for, like your car registration.
Right.
So you just mentioned you're ex-military, so you have certain privileges. So you have access to the PX, right?
Right. The PX and the commissary. The commissary is a huge benefit. That's the grocery store.
Yeah. So is the grocery store, are the prices that much lower? I've never been in one.
It's about 30%. And I think it depends, like a lot of the younger generation, they don't think they're getting such a value, but you could go to the local grocery stores and they might have individual items less or their generic brand, but most of the stuff in the commissary is all like name brand, and their meat, it's very good quality meat too. So
interesting.
Wow.
So do you usually shop in the commissary?
I do. That's where I do all my grocery shopping.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And how close are you to the PX?
We're really close, probably about 15 minutes. And that was another thing that we really liked about Steilacoom. My husband, the base is actually broken up into two sides, North Fort and main post, and it's split by Interstate 5. So the side that's North Fort, that's closest to us, and my husband works there, so he can be to work in 10 minutes from our house. And then the commissary and the PX about 15, maybe 20 minutes. So it's not that bad.
So are you also allowed to use the gym?
Yes, but I have a Peloton, so I use that.
Yes, of course. Who needs a gym when you have a Peloton?
You even asked that question.
Well, it's funny.
Yeah.
Because my husband, he goes to work out because he likes to have the classes, to work out.
Yeah, me too.
But I love the fact, the time saver of being able to just hop on the bike.
Yeah,
can't beat it.
Are you a two-car family? Because he takes the car to work, I guess, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think we'll stay that way because I'm also a travel writer, so I go out of town occasionally or do day trips. So we definitely each need our own car. But I also think too, with independence-wise, I think, when you start thinking about retirement, you got to think about how much time you want to spend together too. One of the things my mom said when they retired, my dad retired from the Navy, and she always tells this funny story, this briefing they went to, and the man was talking about the briefing, and he was saying, so I retired from the military, and he says, my wife was the sweetest, kindest lady, I've ever met. And he says, so, every day I'd get up, okay, what are we doing now? And she would be doing laundry, and I'd follow her around, and, I just really, getting involved with her life. So he says, by the end of 2 weeks of me following her around, asking about every little thing, he says, this sweet, kind woman just lost it. So he says, he was telling the men, when you retire, you need to make sure you have a hobby, and you need to understand there was this whole life that you didn't know that existed in this house.
So funny.
But it was so sweet that he would actually follow around to learn, because you also hear the opposite of, you should have hobbies or you should have other interests throughout your life, kind of, right? But you also need that time away from each other. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I think, being in the military too, I love the fact, like, I feel like my husband and I are still on our honeymoon because we were separated off and on so much. So we really appreciate each other. And we got married later in life too. So it's something that I really appreciate and value.
And we got to thank you both for all your service and your hard work, keeping our freedom.
Thank you. Yeah, there's some tough years, but
sure.
We did well.
Yeah, good for you. Well, I'll tell you, with Gene and I during COVID, we both had a chance to really be together 24/7. Because I was working from home and then he was working from home. But all I can say is thank God for the 2 floors. Okay. He would be down. We were fine. We were fine. I mean, we're great together, and we could be together 24/7. And sometimes his jokes aren't that funny, but you have to make believe that they are. Okay. Never mind. So let me ask you, is Steilacoom a walkable city? I mean, if you're elderly, how are the roads? Yeah.
Yes, so Steilacoom is a great walkable city, and that's one of the things I just love about it. So I have a couple friends that live in the neighborhood, and so we walk a couple times a week. And the city's hilly, so we've kind of done a route so that at one point some of the hills were just really tough, but now we have a route that's manageable. Where you go one way and go up a hill and go the other way. Yeah. So, and there's a group of older ladies. We call them my friend and I call them the Steilacoom Walking Club, which is unofficial. But when we first started walking, there was about 8 of these ladies, and they meet a couple times a week and all walk together. So that's kind of neat to see. And so my friend, she and I are both in our late 50s. And so we're like, I hope we're still doing that, 20 years from now. So it's nice to see that. So there's a lot of retirees and people watch out for each other, but the neighborhood is just very safe and walkable. And I love that about it.
Yeah. So where you are, can you walk to get some coffee? Like, is there a little downtown or?
Oh, absolutely. So it's funny that you mentioned coffee because I recently wrote an article for Travel Awaits, and that's the website that targets the over 50 audience. And I wrote an article about where to travel based on the fact that you're a travel lover. And one of the things that I love about traveling is going to these great coffee shops. And so I actually have a neighborhood that has a just lovely coffee shop. So we can stop, my friend and I walk a couple times a week, so we can stop there and have coffee. And it's also such a community hub. Like they have a big community table in the middle. There's a group of ladies that they just meet every Tuesday morning at 9:00 to have coffee, and stuff like that. So it's very, very popular within the neighborhood. Great. And you see a lot of community interaction there. And that's something I really love about this area.
Yeah. So that's part of a little main street?
Yeah, so we don't have a huge amount of businesses. There's a restaurant, I think a beauty salon, barbershop. There's a lady that I can't remember her name, but she owns a tap room, and she's in the military getting ready to retire. And I guess that was her retirement dream, to own a little tap room.
Nice. Wow.
So there's just a couple businesses, a couple shops, but it's relatively small. Like, and the city kind of keeps it that way. Like there's a no drive-through law. You can't have a business that has a drive-through. So there's nothing in the town that's a chain. It's all locally owned business.
Oh, that's nice. Nice.
Yeah.
So if people if tourists come in, this is probably where they might gather, right?
Yeah. So there's a little museum, and the area is really popular, especially like for 4th of July, because we have an old-fashioned 4th of July. And then we also have a lot of parks, and one of the parks is right on the water. Sunnyside Beach, and that looks the sound. So people come from out of the area just to go to that park and Little Beach.
Oh, that sounds nice. Sounds cozy. Yeah, one of my girlfriends and I, we walk, and what we look forward to most is sitting down and getting that coffee and a little biscotti or something. I think that's why we do the walk.
Well, and I think walking is so important too, because a big part of my life is travel. I love to travel, as I've gotten older, and I share your issues with, weight and everything. Mm-hmm. And so I've been really working hard just to maintain my health and my fitness level so that I can travel and do all the things that you want. And at this point in our life too, it's more about maintenance than, getting better.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
My friend's mom ended up, in a wheelchair and everything, just due to inactivity, basically.
Oh, wow.
And so I see that, and that's really motivated me and her as well to, keep that fitness level up so that you can do the things you want to do as you get older.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we talked about home costs earlier. What about things like groceries and, costs that keep us going and all that? What's that like in Steilacoom?
Well, not too far away, it's maybe a 5 or 10 minute drive is a Safeway.
Okay.
So there's the grocery stores that people, like the, in the area. And then there's also, you get the more higher end ones. In our area, it's called the Metropolitan Market. There's really high end grocery stores, but there's a variety of places to shop and everything.
Yeah. Is there a Whole Foods by you?
There is a Whole Foods and a Trader Joe's and all that. That's
Trader Joe's, go.
Yeah, I didn't want to.
Yeah, the little town's called University Place, and that has Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, Safeway, another Safeway, and that's about maybe a 15-minute drive.
But you don't have to worry about that because you go to the post.
Right.
No, that's true. That's true.
Still,
but I can I can go to Whole Foods and then go across the street to Trader Joe's too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And
you notice the big price drop.
What about gas? Do you get to go to the gas station on the post?
We do, and that's where we mostly get our gas. But gas is definitely higher in Washington.
Yeah.
It's around $4 a gallon now.
Wow.
Maybe more.
It's a little higher than.
But not as high as California. We were there last week, and it was $5 a gallon. So.
Wow.
Oh, where in California were you?
Northern California.
Oh, okay.
And
you're ready.
Okay. And you probably have a lot of people from California moving up there, right?
I think so. I don't really track it too much, but there's always this joke like, "Oh, you're welcome to visit." Just not if you're from California. Because there's a lot of people in the area that don't like that.
Sure.
That change everything. I think they think more about Southern California and Silicon Valley. That's a whole different dynamic than.
Now, where is the nearest international airport?
It's Seattle. It's actually called SeaTac. So it's the Seattle-Tacoma Airport. It's about 45 minutes, depending on traffic.
Oh, okay.
And so that was another thing, for me that was important, was to have that international airport because we loved it.
Okay, good to know. Speaking
of traveling, you have 4 sisters, right?
I do.
And so did that impact your decision to go to Washington?
Well, it was interesting because at first we I think in the back of our minds, either of us might have thought we would retire near family. But as we got older and moving so much, that seemed to matter, less and less. I think as we got older, our family was not so much the extended family, but just more our nuclear family. And so once we moved out here, to me, it didn't matter how far I had to go to see family. We just loved it so much out here. That was the decision. That was more important to us.
And plus, both kids are near you, right?
Well, Michael's actually in Egypt right now, and then Charlie he completed his Air Force training and then came back home because there's a community college that offers this pilot program. So it was just easier for him to live at home. So.
You were saying that when we spoke the other day. That's amazing that a community college has a class where you can become a commercial pilot. I've never heard that.
And they own
that's such an opportunity.
Plane. It's a great job, and there's such a shortage of pilots.
Right.
It's not just the airlines. There's so many things that people fly for. One is an instructor, so they're constantly in search of pilots for instructors. There's even people that fly and will have people want their ashes.
Oh, yeah.
For Mount Rainier. I mean, it's just crazy stuff. Sightseeing flights. There's also big with the wildfires. That's a whole nother area of flying. Yeah, so there's just quite then private, commercial pilot, but you might fly, somebody individually that owns a plane. Mm-hmm. So there's just so many options.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
That's a great opportunity. I never heard of a community college having that before, but that's great.
Yeah, I was surprised as well. Yeah. Too.
And speaking of fires, how close have the fires got to you?
They don't typically get too close to us because you get so much water, but it's weird because the way the weather works here is very strange. Like in summer, it doesn't rain at all. And then in the fall, it starts going for mostly sunny days, and you'll have a couple rainy days, and then it gradually switch to more rainy, less sunny, and then it pretty much rains most of the late fall and winter and early spring, and then it stops again. But we've gotten impacted by the smoke where it was very, very bad, where you couldn't even see the mountains out back. that. And it just depends. Like the one year, the smoke was coming from Oregon, and the way the winds and everything work, it's really unusual. So there's been some years where it's been really bad, and then other years not.
Is that a concern? I mean, a worry? Do you feel like anxious at all, that we might have to evacuate kind of feeling?
No, because we're so close to the water. And there's kind of like a rainforest type, place right before us. So I think, but I've seen like on Interstate 5, we've seen places on the highway catch on fire, from somebody like may have had a problem with their car, or could have been a cigarette or something, and you'll be, oh my gosh, on fire. So, but not really something I personally worry that much about. But I know it's a big concern here in Washington. My husband worked for the Washington National Guard for a while. That's one of their big missions is fires. So, he got a lot of insight into that. It can be, but we'll see what happens. But another way it impacts is all this land burns, and then we get so much rain. So you have these hillsides, and if they have no trees on them or vegetation, they get really soaked with the rain. And so just this past week, there were a lot of landslides in Washington, because normally you would expect with this volume of stuff, it would be more snow than rain. It was a lot of rain. So these hillsides just got so full with water that they couldn't take anymore. And they just, slid down.
Wow.
It actually impacted, the interstate. And
I'll bet.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what about weather? I know in the Pacific Northwest, it's been unusually hot the last 2 summers. Does it get really hot in the summer?
So we don't have air conditioning. We just have heat in the house. So we've been here, I guess, about 8 years between living on the base and living in the house we're in now. So the house we're in now usually cools off by the end of the day, like about once the sun goes down, it cools off enough. You just open the windows and it stays really cool. And it's actually kind of interesting. So you open your windows at night and you get all that cold air in. And then in the morning, you close the windows and your blinds. And then that keeps it cool, usually till about 6 or 7. And so our hottest part of the day, the sun goes down in the west. So our hottest part of the day is later. It's more like 5 o'clock, versus like 2 or 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah. Well, that speaks volumes, not having an air conditioner and the fact you don't need it.
So there's usually about 2 weeks where it's really uncomfortable, just, around 5 or 6. And then once it, cools down, it's fine.
Oh, that's nice.
That sounds really nice.
Yeah. So that was one of the things I was surprised about here. I feel like our utility cost has been very low, but I think that's because we don't have an air conditioning.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We have one in
so
every
I feel
room.
like I pay a lot less than I did than when we lived in Georgia. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll bet. So, can you talk healthcare? You guys in the military, you have it made. We've had other military couples on the show,
right? So we're very blessed with the,
but in general,
with the healthcare coverage that we have. So one of the things that was really nice for us, like not all military bases will see retirees. But because they have a larger hospital here and it's a bigger area, they're still able to see retirees. So I can have a primary care doctor on the base, but a lot of times with the specialists, I'll have to go out into the community to see a civilian doctor.
Oh, so on the base, is that the VA or it's different than the VA?
Well, there's difference. So you have the military healthcare system, and that treats soldier or your service members and their families. And then sometimes retirees can access that. And the biggest benefit for retirees is being able to use the pharmacy. So if we get our prescriptions from the base, then we don't have to pay any copays or anything. That's a huge benefit. Yeah, and then the VA is separate. So if you've served in the military and you have some type of disability, there's different healthcare options through the VA to take care of what got broken, when you're in the service. But they also do, some stuff like my husband and I are both veterans. So, we were able to get our COVID shots, flu shots at the VA, and we were able to get the COVID shots before we could get them anywhere else. So that was a big.
What if you're not in the military? Is there a hospital around?
Yes. So there's, Lakewood is smaller. So it has one hospital, and then you have Tacoma, and then the healthcare system in Seattle is very good. You've got some medical schools and things like that. So I've actually had a surgery in a hospital in Seattle, and I was very happy with my care.
How far are you from Seattle?
With the traffic, you just never know, but typically maybe a little over an hour.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's not bad.
Well, but if you need
it's not too bad, but during rush hour, that can That can be 3 hours.
And what kinds of activities are there for folks who are interested in the area? Are there courses? I know that you had mentioned like a university area, but if you wanted to take pottery or anything like that, what's available?
Well, all the community colleges offer continuing education programs. And so they have a variety of different classes, and little things like you said, maybe pottery or cooking or, and also for people that have skills, that's an option too. Like the community college, you can propose a continuing education class to them. You could teach something, if you like.
Oh,
So,
wow.
I mean, they've got photography classes, creative writing, variety.
But there's a ton of outdoor activities, obviously.
Yes, and that's the big thing here. So we can see, depending on where we are, we can see Mount Rainier. And so there's a saying in the area that, the mountain's out. So that means you got to get outside because you can see the mountain today. So that's a big...
yeah, a lot of people must hike, right?
Yeah, a lot of hiking, a lot of kayaking, just depending on the time of year. But what a lot of people don't realize, especially like Olympic National Park, is that's a rainforest. So in the summer, it dries up. So it's actually much more beautiful to see it in the winter or the spring after it greens back up again. And then the crowds aren't there either. So you can, if you're willing, throw on some rain gear, you just get this great experience.
Yeah.
And that's one thing too in this area, like with the kids in sport, everything runs rain or shine. So nothing is canceled because of the rain. You just put on the right gear.
Right, because you get so used to that.
It's a very mild winter. Usually it's the 40s or 50s every day, and there's maybe only a 10-degree difference at night. So you have the rain, but overall it's pretty mild. And, we will get occasional cold days where it drops down. And usually once a year we'll get snow, but we're so close to the water that, that's rare to get. But then we're super close to it. You drive 30 minutes and you're in the Cascade foothills and you can access snow play areas or go up to Mount Rainier and snowshoe and everything. So all that's very close.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. You don't have to worry about shoveling snow like inches and inches. I know.
Neither do you, Gil.
All right, Gene. But you know what? I love looking at snow and I do like the 4 seasons, but we've been getting kind of sporadic in the last couple of years. I think the climate changes,
Some years we get a lot, some years we get hardly any, but some years we get a lot.
But snow is a nice place to visit, but I don't want to live there.
I used to love it, but not anymore.
Yeah, not anymore.
I just want to mention you're writing a book due out in September of 2022. The title
I am. It's with Reedy Press, and they have a series. It's called the 100 Things series. So it's 100 things to do in Tacoma before you die. So I was really excited. I just got this random email one day from the publisher at Reedy Press asking if I'd be interested in writing this book. Come to find out, I had done a lot of work with Travel Tacoma, and so they had reached out to this Visitors Bureau looking for a local writer, and they recommended me. So I'm very excited to be working on it.
Oh, that's great.
So great.
Yeah, so it'll be out in September of 2022.
Nice.
And how far is Tacoma from you?
Well, we're in what's called Pierce County, and so Steilacoom, it's kind of the Tacoma area,
so
we're kind of like the little suburb towns outside of.
And are there really 100 good things to do there?
Absolutely. Like I'm having a really hard time. And one of the things that's really important for me, though, is to include a lot of diversity and small family-owned businesses. So all the restaurants, a lot of the shopping and things like that, I'm including those small local places. And so I've reached out to a lot of people I know in different fields and everything to find everybody's favorites. So
Oh, that's great.
It's hard to narrow it down, to just 20 restaurants in this area because the food is so good.
What are some of your favorite foods?
Well, one of the things growing up in a military family, traveling so much, we got to eat such a variety of food. And, my mom was just an excellent cook. So she she had the Louisiana food. So that's just, awesome right there. But moving out to California with my dad, she just fell in love with Mexican food. And at that time, you didn't get Mexican food east of the Mississippi. And so she just was fascinated by it, learned how to cook. Later, at one of the duty stations, we lived next to a Hispanic family. And so she taught my mom how to make different things, and my mom taught her how to make some Louisiana specialties.
Great.
And so that's the way it was growing up. We did Italian food one night, Mexican food, different things. Like she would a couple of times was able to meet my dad in Europe or Asia and picked up stuff and would bring that back. And so I've kind of carried that over my life as well. So we just have a very eclectic, type, food that we like to eat.
Those are great influences.
The seafood out there must be great, right?
Oh, the seafood is incredible. This whole area, the food is just better. Like there's a big farm to table type thing. So when you go out to eat, the chefs in this area really like to source locally as much as possible.
Oh, wow.
And just the cheese, milk, everything is just so fresh. So you have the western area of Washington, and then you go over the mountains on the other side. And that's a huge agricultural area.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And then also Washington is a huge wine region now too. And so you just get some wines that I think are very competitive with California wine. A lot of fun. And there are, a lot of these small boutique wineries. So that's a great way to, see where your wine came from. So that's what I tend to buy too. I'll buy from the local places, and then
great,
where it came from,
Support local.
So your husband must like that, you write about something new, you travel to a new area, you bring home.
Right. He gets
wine.
to go on some of my trips too. So that's been nice. We've got
great. And I have a question. You seem to have found the town of your dreams, but is there anything differently you would do knowing what you know now about looking for a retirement place or home?
Actually, I don't think so. We're very happy with our decision. We love our house. It's been challenging. I think probably one things I would have done is made sure I had the pipes. You do the camera and check the pipes.
Yeah.
So I probably would have paid a little bit more and had a better inspection done because we used the inspector that our realtor recommended. And in hindsight, didn't realize what a conflict of interest.
Yeah, never do that.
So I would definitely say if you're buying an older home, really take that time and pay the extra money for a really good inspection. But in this market, that's not really going to matter if there's
they're buying homes without inspections. It's insane.
Yeah.
I know. I just couldn't do it. We had the house inspected and everything. So we just lucked out. And and this was an older home, but it had some of the things done already. Like it had a new furnace and had new windows. So some of the more expensive things.
Wow, that's great.
Oh yeah, that's a good sign.
And what tips would you give someone looking for a retirement city?
I think the first thing is to kind of think about what type of people you are. A lot of people think, oh, I went to this great vacation place and I really liked it while I was on vacation, but that's not actually living there. So, you got to think about, well, what's my day going to look like? What type of things do I like to do each day? Do I want to get up and go to a coffee shop? Do I want to eat at home? Do I like golf? My grandfather was a huge golfer, and that's what he did every day. He would get up and go golf, and then my grandmother had her time. Then he'd get home and they'd have lunch together. They were a big Catholic family, so they would go to daily mass, and then he would go off and play golf, and then she'd go home and do her thing. And, then they'd get linked back up at lunch and everything. I think, it's just figuring out what type of people you like. Do you want to live in a big city? As you get older, you're going to want to drive in that crazy traffic, that cities have, and the high-speed interstates and things like that. So my mom has what she calls her block or her square. And so within, the square, she can get to her doctor, she can get to her.
Wow.
That's a great idea.
The grocery store, things like that. She doesn't have to get on the interstate. It's all, within like 5 or 10 minutes of where she lives. I think the biggest thing that I would recommend is when you think in retirement is to decide if you're going to do more than one retirement home. What's your plan?
I have one last question. You said your first job was at Disney. How old were you, and did you play a character?
No, I didn't, but I was 16 when I started working there, and it's still my favorite job, except for travel writing that I ever had.
Wow.
It's so funny because when you work at Disney, you're not an employee, you're a cast member. And so you're a vital part of the show, even if you're, whether you're, sweeping up trash on the street, or I worked in, the fast food restaurants, you were an important part of that experience for the guests, not the customers, the guests.
Well, that's nice.
And the guests are always right. That that level of customer service, though, really resonated with me. And now that I travel a lot and travel right, I think back on that, and I have a really high bar for customer service now.
Good.
And I feel like that's such an important part of the experience, especially, when you go out to eat and you're at a restaurant, your server, if they really know the food and they know, the history of the restaurant, that makes such a difference in the whole experience. But it was a blast working at Disney. I worked there from when I was in high school from 16 to 18, till I was a senior in high school.
Great high school. All right, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you. I really appreciate what you guys are doing. This is fascinating. And I think, I wish I had known about you when we were trying to think about where to retire.
Well, I got to tell you, we've met some interesting people moving to really fascinating places, even in the U.S., which is where we intend to find our little, next home. And now is just, there's so many choices. Having met you, having met all the other folks, it's given us, it's broadened our thinking. It's made our decision tougher. But
I can imagine. Yeah. Are you getting have you even narrowed it down to a region yet?
Well, the problem also is with COVID, we haven't been able to make any trips. We did take a trip to Florida at the beginning of all this in early 2020, but we want to get on the road and check out some of these places that we have found sound so fascinating. So our list is under construction.
Gil wants to stay in the East because her sisters are here and brothers.
Yeah.
I would move west, but I don't think that may not happen. We'll see. We'll see. I have this Pacific Northwest shirt on. I've always wanted to live in Pacific Northwest.
We picked that up when we were out there
in Seattle.
Oh, yeah.
Great trip.
I like that.
We did travel a little.
Yeah. Well, I'm the oldest of 7 kids, and with our parents gone, we're pretty close. So I think maybe we'll get a condo or something in Pennsylvania and we'll stay on the East Coast. But then we really want to travel around the world, and hopefully we will go through with that. Right, Gene?
Oh, yeah, we'll definitely go through.
Yeah. But we thank you so much for participating.
Thank you so much.
And sharing your story. Say hi to Richard.
I will.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take
Thanks
care.
so much.
Bye.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you know someone who's relocated for retirement and wishes to share their story with us, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. Our email address is gg@retirethere.com. Our website is retirethere.com, and you may follow us on Twitter @retirethere_. Now, if you've liked our show, please subscribe and rate it in Apple Podcasts. In the meantime, be well.